That's right. Welcome back to another live stream talking about Hot D, which earned its name this week, folks. I got to pull up the stream here on my other monitor. I'm going to let some people roll in, but it's good to see you. I'm, of course, Jimmy Nuts. For those of you who have not tuned in for the very first time, welcome to the Fantasy Network, where I do a bunch of book reviews, live streams, bookish podcasts, and I'm a massive Song of Ice and Fire fan, clearly, and I could not wait to talk about episode 4 of House of the Dragon. I know I said this last week, but I do think that this is the best episode. And that mainly comes from the fact that even though there's not a ton of action in this episode, there's a lot of tension and the drama is getting thicker than a snicker, boys. Let's go. Let's go. This is one of those episodes where my wife looks across the couch and is like, this is messy. I'm like, yeah, you're damn right it is. I do want to apologize if my chair bounces back and forth and makes any noise. It broke today, so that's interesting. I got to figure that out. Maybe I'll get one of those sweet Secret Labs Targaryen chairs. I love seeing the people roll in here and appreciate everyone who's not watching live. They'll watch it after the fact. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. Go ahead and hit like on this to help other people find it after the fact. I know that these videos aren't typical here on the channel. My live streams usually involve guests of some sorts and a very specific topic to talk about with another person. But I like doing these alone because I usually have a lot to say and I don't want to talk over my guests. So I figure why not just make my guest you in chat and get your guys' thoughts for this. These videos aren't super popular on my channel because not everyone's watching the show, of course. But I do love doing these. Shake says Dirty Damon, the well-known Michael Jackson song. I do feel like Damon and Kristen Cole need some sort of entrance music every time they hit on the screen because they're both just uber chads, right? Both just total giga chads. Maybe like the Shawn Michaels music hits every time Kristen Cole walks into a room. I think that would work. Absolutely. Seems like a lot of people in the chat did enjoy this episode, which is awesome. Kai says not a ton of action, but a ton of action, if you know what I mean. Lots of short strokes and long strokes, folks. I mean, this was great. And it's cool to see that other people enjoyed it. I was very curious. Alex says this episode definitely wasn't flaccid. I would agree with that. And Alex will be my guest on Chatting with Nuts this week. So if you were wondering who we would be bringing on at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time this Friday live on the channel for Chatting with Nuts, that is Alex. So make sure to go by and subscribe to his channel before that so you can get all caught up on his stuff so we can have a good conversation here on Friday. I'm really excited about it, Alex. Bobby B is awfully silent during live streams. Yes, he gets a little shy. He's got to practice his lines. Derry says everything in the episode matches the known outcomes written about in Fire and Blood while changing what we might think have happened, and it's way spicier. Yeah, I'm curious to see what people think about this. I saw someone mention this in another live stream on a comment, and someone said that they feel like Fire and Blood, this part obviously that the show's covering, does it get worse now that we have, obviously there's book canon and show canon, we know that. But the comment was arguing the fact that they feel like Fire and Blood is not as interesting now that we know what really went down. To me, I think that the book lore and the show lore can stay independent in my head. I've been able to do that with the main show as well. But some people, when that comment came up, a lot of people were agreeing in the other chat, which had thousands of people in it. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And I'd love to hear people's comments in the chat or after the fact. If you think Fire and Blood actually gets a little worse since we actually have some sort of idea of what happened in these circumstances where it was ambiguous in the text. So very curious of what y'all think about that. Tall Guy Reads says, this episode def has me theorizing more than the previous 3. Granted, I haven't read Fire and Blood yet. Yeah, I think at this point, if you haven't read Fire and Blood, maybe just wait, just experience this, because I'm telling you, this episode is nothing. If you think this is dramatic and that this is crazy, or well, maybe not so crazy, but just wow, look at all these threads being laid. It gets so much more ridiculous. And they're going to add a lot more context to the events that are coming. So this was a pretty good indicator for me that that they got it on lock. Like I thought the writing was probably the best this episode because time jump wasn't as extreme. I didn't feel like we were just trying to get through some of the stuff that we've had in the past episodes. Now I had no problem with any of those things because we need to get through some time so we can lay out like the really dense stuff that's coming. But yeah, this was the first episode that I really felt like took a second to breathe and delivered big time on a lot of drama. So Super Gains Bros, let's go. What's up, Matt? Shake says, I don't think these are objective versions that Gurm intended, so I would certainly separate show versus book canon here. Gurm didn't even decide on an objective version. Right. And Gurm writes in a way that makes you question what's true, right? And especially in Fire and Blood, because it's historical text, there's biases, different accounts, right? We can talk about that book for the next 100 years. And that's also how the main series is written in some regard, where there's a lot of room for interpretation and theories. That's on purpose. And I think that is what's going to keep this text alive through the next century and the century after that. And I think that's why it'll always be considered a classic in the fantasy genre. And the thing I love about House of the Dragon, more so than the Game of Thrones show, actually, is there's still room for interpretation when it comes to this episode and House of the Dragon. And I think it's because Ryan Condell is a big fan of the books, taking a lot of cues from Gurm, and the show will be open for interpretation in a lot of ways as well. Things that we might not necessarily get answers for at the end, and we can talk about for a very long time. For those of you who aren't aware, I do an immediate post-episode reaction on the Bend the Knee podcast. Go check them out. They are live on YouTube. They do a watch along, and then I jump in right after the episode with Matt and Ez, and then we talk about the episode. So one of the things that I talked about was at the end of the episode, we see Moon Tea be given to Rhaenyra by the Maester. And I was shooting from the hip. I was hyped up, and I was like, there's no way that Otto didn't send that Maester, even though he got dismissed. I was convinced that Otto sent the Maester. Now, after seeing some comments, a lot of them calling me an idiot, and I had a couple of people reach out to me on Twitter and stuff, I do believe that maybe I was a little rambunctious after the fact, saying that was for sure what happened. I think it's also extremely plausible and probably more likely that Viserys did send the Moon Tea with the Maester, but we'll never know. I don't believe we'll ever get that answer. And that is like one of those things. It's interpretation. It's based on opinion. So we can discuss this and argue this. And I think that gives this show a lot more life, and it just makes it more fun to engage in. So that's just an example. I did want to clear that up, though, for anyone that's coming over from the Bend the Knee post-episode reaction. I've kind of come back down from that a little bit. I do believe that Viserys probably sent the Maester to give the Moon Tea to Rhaenyra, but you're a fool. Not really, but I believe that Otto, even though he's been dismissed his hand, will 100% know if that Moon Tea is drank or not. Will the cup be returned empty, full? We'll find out. And Lauren, one of my patrons, and she hit me up on Twitter and tagged Bend the Knee, and she said, hey, Rhaenyra's kind of damned if she does and damned if she doesn't. If she drinks the Moon Tea, it kind of admits that she lied to Alicent, right? Because she swore on her mother's memory that Damon did not touch her. Now we know that it's not Damon we got to worry about. It's, that Chad Kristen Cole that came in after, which we'll talk about here in a second. But if she drinks it, it's kind of an admission that she lied in some regard. People might not know it's Kristen Cole, but then they know that she, has to take a precaution not to have a child. On the flip side of that, if she doesn't, what if she's pregnant? And then she has the kid, and then she's damned either way, unless if she can marry like Laenor quick enough. So what a great ending to the episode. I know we had the Damon scene where him running out on the beach and all that stuff. Like, we've had some pretty good endings, but this one, that last scene, I felt like you could cut the tension with a knife. That's a good cliffhanger, folks. It's a really good cliffhanger and a good thread for the remainder of the season, I think. So be very curious what people think about that. Do you think I'm off? Do you think that the Maester's conspiracy, do you believe that they have no allegiance to Otto? I do. I think the High Towers definitely have some sort of command over the Maesters, not unlike we saw the Lannisters, who are not the namesake of the king at the time in King's Landing and early Game of Thrones. Pycelle was loyal to Tywin. Tywin wasn't the king, even though sometimes it felt like it. He wasn't the king. And obviously, even whenever Jon Arryn was handed the king. It seemed like Pycelle was in the Lannisters' pocket. He let them in when Aerys was king. So I'm just saying, Maesters being corrupt, it doesn't have to go so deep that it's like this massive conspiracy. But there's reason to question. That's all I'll say about that. So I did want to say, for anyone that watched the reaction, I do believe that maybe I was wrong about Otto sending the Maester, but I do believe he'll get a report back. Let's get caught up on some of these comments here. Viserys, yeah, Allison, Damon really wants to go view art. Dur. Damon ain't interested in them tapestries. Yeah, there was some good humor in this episode. Very good. Yeah, Shake agrees. That's how also how House of the Dragon is written, to be fair. So much speculation about Damon's motivations. Oh, yeah, and Damon remains clouded in mystery for the most part. Says, thoughts on the Jon Snow spinoff potentially elaborating on the Prince of that was promised prophecy with a White Walker revival focus the House. I don't know. We'll see. I will say this. I know everyone's like, I don't want it. I hate it. I heard Alt Shift X say it. He's like, I don't really think that that's something I want. I'll try it. I'll give anything a fair shake. So, Super Gainsboro, Matt says, I think Miguel is leaving House of Dragons to do the first bit of Snow. Kit Harington has said he's a very good friend. Oh, yeah, I did see that interview where Kit praised House of the Dragon and talked about Miguel. And I think that is not a far-fetched theory at all. Panzer Bamson says, did you notice the back of Viserys? Lots of sores in that sex scene. Poor Allison. Yeah, I'm going to dive into that here in a little bit, but Viserys isn't getting better. And I know some people believe that the Maesters are potentially poisoning Viserys. I don't know if I agree with this. And the simple matter of the fact is that Aegon is, let's say Otto Hightower is manipulating all the Maesters, all of them, and they're poisoning the king. It would be really unfortunate if Viserys was to die for Otto Hightower right now, because not just because he's out of power, but even before that, Aegon's not heir yet. Aegon hasn't been named heir, so Otto's still trying to work that. He's trying to squeeze him in there. So if the Maesters were to, expedite his death, that is not good for Otto. Now, if Aegon had been named heir or something like that, or someone in Otto's family was ready to be on the throne and then he started declining, I'd say maybe the Maesters are accelerating it a bit. Now, to counteract myself, one of the more interesting pieces of imagery in this episode is whenever they show the Balerion skull and there are rats in the eyes, and they're just like crawling all over the dragon. Some people said that it kind of is symbolism of maybe Viserys' declining health and how the dragons are being eaten from the rats in the walls and all the secrets being passed around. But I also thought Maesters are called little gray rats in the books. And I said, man, those are gray rats in a dragon skull. Interesting. Very interesting. And if you think that, like, I'm not saying that's 100% objective, like I'm probably wrong, but if you do not believe that House of the Dragon has some super on the nose, obvious foreshadowing, it does. And what I'm about to say in chat, if you've read Fire and Blood, do not talk about what this is. Do not spoil it for anybody. And I'm not going to spoil it, but all I'm going to say is the ending of the show has been foreshadowed in one of the episodes that have aired on HBO, like the actual pretty much end of the series. And it's blunt if you know it. But of course, a lot of people haven't read Fire and Blood, so they don't. But it's there. And it's on the nose. I thought it was a little like abrupt when I saw it. But in chat, please do not tell us what the moment was. If you know, that's great. Wink, good on you. But I'm just saying that foreshadowing like this and looking for symbolism is absolutely a valid way to watch this television show, in my opinion. Okay, Peishi says, I hope, is it Peishi? If I'm wrong, tell me. I don't mean to mispronounce. I think it's very plausible that Otto might have sent it, or at least he talked with the Maesters and they took matters into their own hands. And I saw somebody was like, well, Rhaenyra is going to ask her dad about, say, hey, I took your moon tea. I don't know if that's a conversation they're going to have. Like, they already aren't really great communicators. I don't know if she's going to walk up and be like, hey, Dad, I took my plan tea. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. The tension in this episode in general was insane throughout. Yes. Some of the tension came from the fact that we were basically waiting the entire episode for father and daughter to talk. And it just kept escalating and they kept climbing the stairs of conversations. And Rhaenyra getting closer and closer to the king, talking to Alicent right beforehand, the queen. And the climax of the show is a conversation between a father and a daughter. And that is House of the Dragon. It's family. It's a family drama. It's much more scoped than Game of Thrones was. And I thought it was really, really beautifully illustrated that conversation was going to have a lot of weight to it. And there was build up to that in the episode that was kind of subconscious in a lot of ways. So I really, really thought the tension was not just good throughout the episode, but it kept escalating all the way until the end. So Kai agrees, says totally maesters know where their chains are forged. Yeah, and by the way, I don't want to create an echo chamber. So if you think I'm full of it, just tell me. It's fine. But it does seem like I'm getting some support here from the bleachers, which I don't mind seeing. Liam says, I think all the changes and fleshing out of it predominantly benefits the original work. House of the Dragon is like a historical fiction of Westerosi history rather than an adaptation in the way Game of Thrones was. I agree with you, and I think in a lot of ways that this is a harder show to make. I think there's more ways to mess up. And I know everyone says, well, the story's complete. Yeah, but there's so many details they've left out. And the things that they have added in between to flesh these things out have been, in my opinion, successful. So I was very happy. Tall Guy Reed says, I'm very curious as to who was watching Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole. I'm sure we will see some repercussions of that for sure. Yeah, I'll be honest, I missed the fact that I saw someone else comment that someone was watching, and I'm not sure who it was. I don't know if it's someone from the White Worms camp. Maybe it's Mushroom, but I'm not sure. Pycelle was the worst. Was the worst. And Derry saying the spy that saw Damon and Rhaenyra was being paid by Mysaria. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. So the Blackwood kid gave me serious Lyanna Mormont vibes. Hope we see more of him. So yeah. So I believe that people are thinking that this is Benjent, right? Bloody Blackwood. But people are saying the timeline doesn't match up. So it should be, and I might be getting it wrong, but I think it's Samwell Blackwood. It should be his dad, Benjen's dad. But I don't know I don't even know if they gave him a first name in this episode. If they did, let me know. But man, the Brackens just keep taking L's. Am I right? We're Team Blackwood here on the Fantasy Network. Absolutely no Bracken supporters allowed. I will ban you from the chat. Blackwood, old gods, all day long. All joking aside, I love that scene. That's a nod to us, like the people who watch these streams, the people who go and listen to a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. That was our nod. And I saw somebody like that, this is just needless violence. That doesn't make sense. I'm like, no, it actually makes total sense in the lore. And it's definitely a nod to the nerds. So I was happy with it. Shake says long-term poisoning. Why would they work over such a long time if they want to kill him? Yeah. Derry says the tea. If Rhaenyra hadn't shagged Kristen when she got home, she could have been able to just leave the tea, but now she kind of can't. That's right. That's right. Because Damon apparently, it was even confirmed after the episode, but my suspicion is that nothing actually, the deed wasn't done with Rhaenyra and Damon. And can we just say that we have a television show in America where people are cheering on an uncle and a niece getting together? Like people are shipping that, or whatever the terminology is that the kids use these days. Like that's a thing. Hello, mother. Connor says, I don't think the Maesters are poisoning the king, but they sure as heck aren't giving him 5-star service according to their Yelp page. Can someone please make a Photoshop Yelp page for the Maesters and just put like Viserys's back picture and be like, they couldn't even cure my MRSA. Yeah, there were also rats on the king's bed. Yep. Which was honestly pretty chilling. I'm going to talk about both of those scenes probably up next. I'm just trying to get here caught up in the chat. Austin says, how you enjoying House of the Dragon, Jimmy? I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. I think it's excellent. I think it, I just saw someone today and they said that, if they wanted more Game of Thrones, they would just go watch Game of Thrones again, and they don't want to do that. I don't know about y'all, but like, I feel very different about this show in some ways. Like it still has it feels like I'm in Westeros, which is excellent, and it needed to be that way. But it is such a different show than Game of Thrones. Kind of it makes me like this is kind of like the pace that I wish a Warlord Chronicles by Bernard Cornwell would also be adapted, which is coming to TV, though it's on like some minor network, if I'm not mistaken, or it's something in Britain. I might be wrong, but I've kind of lost a little bit of hope for that adaptation. Kevin Jenkins says, I don't know, Jimmy. I think there was a couple different climaxes this episode. Possibly. Oh, man. All episodes so far actually have a Rhaenyra Viserys conversation as a climax. That's a good point. I'd have to go back and verify that. I mean, I would say that's not necessarily true for episode 3. I think it'd be a hard way to argue that Damon and Crab Feeder isn't the climax. I mean, I think there's a high point in the episode, but it was definitely the single shot silent scene from Damon in episode 3, at least in my opinion. Shake says, how do you feel about the scene where Damon returned? I feel like the book version felt way more epic. The art in the World of Ice and Fire is also awesome. I was slightly disappointed by the show version. So in the book, and I might get some of the details wrong, but Damon basically, there's a tourney going on, and above the tourney grounds, he does like a couple laps on the dragon on Syrax, right? And then he comes down and lands. And that is way more epic. You're 100% right. My guess is that there's probably another episode coming up that they needed the budget, and they probably didn't want to do another tourney. But I do kind of wish that they would have maybe, been able to fit that in there. But it was cool also seeing the ship scene, the dragon coming out with Syrax coming out. I thought that was really, really cool. So it was Chad Blackwood. I like that. Yeah, Fantasy Fanatic says, wait, someone was watching Rhaenyra and Kristen Cole. Yeah, that's what I want to know. Alex said that a little bit earlier in the chat. I didn't catch that. Was someone watching them? I know Rhaenyra and Damon were spied by Mysaria's, little rat. See, rat, another symbolism. See? The rats in the walls are tearing down this dragon family. But yeah, if someone can confirm that, that'd be great. To be fair, both Brackens and Blackwoods have first men blood. Yeah, well, the Brackens suck, so that's pretty much it, right? Do the Maesters have spy holes? They may have access to them. I don't know if they're theirs, though. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they have ownership. Poisoning over time makes it look like an illness less noticeable than instant death. And you could argue that the Maesters have control of how much poison is going in. And I personally don't believe that they're killing the king, but you could maybe make an argument with the fact that they can play with the remedies enough to where if they need him to have some more time, they can kind of dial it back a little bit, possibly. But I think that Viserys's health failing him is more illustration of the fact that instead of just taking care of the issue, like he needs to cut off his hand, like pretty clearly right now. It's not going to help the back. But like he probably should have cut his hand off at this point, which he did cut Otto off. So he did kind of cut a hand off this episode. But it's his indecision that is going to throw this family into chaos. And that's kind of illustrated through his health failing him and him not being able to just make the right call and take a stand. So Fantasy Fanatic says, I'm all about the Rhaenyra Kristen Cole relationship, but I have a sneaking suspicion it won't end well. Yeah, that one got a lot more complicated, right? So the juxtaposition of Alicent's duty and Rhaenyra's enjoyment is telling us things relate to Viserys and Damon. Viserys was bought into Westeros patriarchy. Damon only cares about Targs. Yeah, and I also believe there's another reasoning behind this in a way. And I kind of mentioned this on the BTK reaction, but Alicent is, that scene's tough. Like Viserys is, taking her and she's kind of trying to not be in the mall. I mean, it's really rough to watch. Viserys has used his power to claim her as a wife and doing his duty as he probably thinks. But it's difficult to watch. It also makes Viserys seem a lot less likable in some ways. And it's just a really, really graphic thing to watch. But I do believe we have to also acknowledge the fact that Kristen Cole's honor was sacrificed for the fact that Rhaenyra needed someone in that moment, that she wanted that experience in that moment. And Sir Kristen Cole's vows, they're soiled. They're done. And she used her position and her power. I'm not saying that he didn't have any decision in it, but there was a reluctancy there in that scene. But for her position and who he is and what she has done for him, I feel like Kristen Cole was probably in a position where he probably, and obviously being attracted to her, probably felt like he shouldn't and couldn't say no. And some people have said, well, he's only actually loyal to the king, not Rhaenyra. He could have said no. That's totally valid. But let's remember who put him on the king's guard, who called his name, who got him in this position, that, basically picked his family up and put a Cole in a position they've never been in before. That was Rhaenyra. And that is why that scene was included earlier in the show. That is not a book scene, by the way. He had already been in prominence from Maidenpool tourney whenever Viserys was crowned. So this is a show-only decision to show her picking him and putting him in the position. So even though he is loyal to the king first and foremost, I do believe that he feels a sense of loyalty and debt to Rhaenyra. So it's interesting that the two people in power in those situations chose to act on it. And that is what I got from the juxtaposition. I do think that also, Derry, your point is very interesting as well, in the difference between Damon and Viserys, who are a lot more alike than people think, but in this way, they are not. Damon actually backs off, goes, but then we see Rhaenyra fulfill the power slot in the scene. And yeah, I honestly really thought the Kristen Cole thing was kind of heartbreaking in a lot of ways, as well as Allison's. I thought coming out of this episode, those were the two that I felt the most for. Peishi says, I want more Damon kicking butt, not grabbing butt. What about just more Damon butt, like we got in episode 1? Austin says, I haven't watched Game of Thrones Song of Ice Fire, but your enthusiasm for the series definitely makes me want to. That or Malazan next year. Hey, you never know when's winter might be come out next year. Maybe. Sally says, this might be unpopular opinion, but episode 4 is my favorite so far. I love the tension in the dialogues. Yeah, I thought it was the best episode from top to bottom. I really did. Just moving through here. Yes, another Alicent Rhaenyra conversation under the weirwood tree. Number 3. In a very pivotal moment where Rhaenyra lies to Alicent. And I'm like 99% sure the swear on her mother's memory is the fact that Daemon did not touch her. Which Daemon might not have been able to do the deed, but they were kissing. They were doing weird stuff, right? Yes, I did catch Mushroom in the episode 5. Pedro says, do you think the Dagger and the Prophecies will have any implication on the books, or is that just show stuff? Yeah, that's just show stuff. I mean, I guess the Dagger could play a significant role. Like, we know where it is. I believe it's in the Vale with Peter Baelish in the books, but I believe that is show-only stuff, in my opinion. Especially because we've kind of found out that the passing down all the way to Viserys seems like it's probably show only, that Condell ran with that idea of Aegon having dreams. So the Dagger is another addition to that kind of ties the two shows together. Because as much as people would like to pretend the two shows aren't connected, they're in the same canon. So, yes, Shake asking the really good question. I'm going to come back to this, Shake, in just a second, because it's one of the bigger points that I want to talk about, and I kind of want to see what people's reaction to the Kristen Cole scene. Fantasy Fanatic says, I love how Kristen Cole hesitated to break his vows. Great acting. I'm very interested to see where his story goes. So if you watched me last week, I said, I'm curious about this Kristen Cole actor. I'm wondering what he's going to be able to deliver, because I said he's got some big stuff coming up. Well, I didn't see this scene coming, really. I thought maybe something like this would happen, reading Fire and Blood. But I thought he delivered. I am sold. So my apprehension to him definitely has ceased. And I thought he did an excellent job of acting just through his facial expressions and body language, especially when Rhaenyra was taking off the cloak and stuff. Really, almost held my breath during that scene. And I really just didn't. I like knights, guys. Like, I don't know. I like the Kingsguard. Like, I didn't want him to break his vows. Derry says, I agree that there's an unfair power dynamic between Rhaenyra and Kristen being shown. Yeah, it's one that I think is worth acknowledging because it was put in there, it was put in there for us to talk about it. And it's supposed to make us feel uncomfortable and how much of his agency mattered in that moment. And did Rhaenyra understand what she was asking of someone to break a vow like that in this world? It's a tough one. Connor says, yes, I think this whole season so far, Rhaenyra has been pushing people away and Cole was firmly planted on her side. But after this, I can see him not liking his honor is now besmirched. Great word, besmirched. Solid. Taylor, what's up? Taylor says, I thought the switching views between Rhaenyra and the brothel with Damon and Alicent Viserys was excellent to show the contrast between the situations. Yeah, and in Damon remaining somehow our favorite, at least my favorite, and somehow still becoming sympathetic while doing a lot of depraved things and being in the slums. And, he's Lord Fleabottom, and we got to see him in Fleabottom. I thought the hood, really good. And to see him at the top of episode 3, and then to see him hung over, beat down by the Kingsguard, laying on the floor, and Viserys holding a knife to his throat. What a range for Daemon Targaryen. Terry says, I'm good with just more Damon butt. I don't think anybody's mad about Damon butt. I was surprised. I thought this episode, and I don't read major news headlines, I thought this episode was going to be like the clickbait of clickbait. I expected this to be a way more of a split episode where either people loved or hated it. Episode 3 had a little bit of that because people were upset with the battle strategy or whatever for 3 and some of the nonsense of plot armor. I'm kind of shocked. I have seen almost unanimous praise, but again, I don't check out Forbes or Entertainment Weekly or any of that stuff, but I knew this episode would get people talking, and I definitely thought people were going to hate it, at least from a general sense. But it doesn't seem, in fact, they said that the audience for this episode went up 5% going head to head with Sunday Night Football's first week. That's really impressive. This show is not just, I think, getting better with each episode, but the appeal is rising, which it was already pretty high. I mean, it's pretty astounding how many people tuned in, but it's growing. So pretty wild. Fantasy Fanatic says, I love Masari's quote in her scene with Damon. Hard lessons are not welcomed, but suffered. But her accent still makes me ache, though. Yeah. Yeah, the accent is quite strange. When your crush likes you back and you're like, what? Does Damon know about the prophecy? I think we can assume that he does not know at this point. I think people really believe that he's some sort of Maegor of the Cruel, which is cruel because it's not true. Persavo says, Kristen's expression when he had to say the news to Rhaenyra was pretty funny. He's dreading the possibility that it's him. Yeah. Well, he's just sitting there and he's seeing all of his friends get called to the principal's office, and he's like, they know. Everybody knows I'm screwed. I might as well just go turn myself in because there goes Tommy. He's in the office now. I'm next. It had that kind of feel, at least for any other fellow troublemakers. I remember those feelings. Oh, I like this parallel Shake brings up. It says, felt like a Jamie moment for Kristen. Very different context, but similar dilemma. Yeah. By the way, Damon is not impotent. Yeah. Quit spreading lies about my boy. Damon is the best because Matt Smith could play Alicent and it would be fantastic. Did Damon groom or woo? I don't know. I'm not going to touch that one. Shake says, I think the praise was because despite the content, it didn't feel gratuitous or voyeuristic. Having a female director maybe help with that. Yeah, and they were very on purpose trying to make this different from Game of Thrones. And this is... I'm gonna sound kind of like a jerk here for a second, but this is where you can tell when someone isn't watching with good intent. The very few people who will complain about the gratuitous nudity on HBO's House of the Dragon. Why do they have to show so much nudity? They don't even understand what they're looking at, and they don't understand how things can be shot in a different way, and there's an artistic value to it. And what the scene's trying to relay. The books and Game of Thrones show were very voyeuristic. It's my biggest criticism of George's writing. that he does not cash out on the fact that the sex scenes or any of these things can actually do a lot for character development. Guy Gavriel does this very well. George does not, unfortunately. But House of the Dragon purposely shot this in a different way, and the execution was much, much different than Game of Thrones. So if you hear someone saying, "Oh, House of the Dragon, oh, HBO, look, it's more boobs," I just feel as if that person's not actually engaging in good faith with the content, and quite frankly, doesn't know what they're talking about. That's probably the meanest you'll ever hear me be. Yeah, it is a great time to be a fantasy fan. So I'm going to scroll up here and we're going to go back to Shake's comment, because this was something I mentioned in my live stream with Ben the Knee after the episode, and it caused a lot of conversation. And I thought it was a good question to ask. And this is something we probably will have answered, but a very good example of things remaining kind of like, wait, what? Or who knows what? Information is now part of the mystery. So Shake says, do you think Damon and Mysaria were working together, or Mysaria was working against Damon? I've seen both interpretations and I'm not sure how I feel about it. And this is exactly the point behind it. And I think it's awesome. I love it. So my question is, well, we know for sure, right, that the White Worm Mysaria is feeding information to Otto. That's pretty much, the guard says, "Hey, my lord, White Worm for you." Okay, little narc boy runs up, tattles. Okay. We see Mysaria then pay her little spy. So without a doubt, Mysaria has been feeding him information to Otto. The question is, how long? And does Damon know? I am now leaning towards Damon did not know. I lean towards Damon did not know because I believe that Mysaria is most likely the one who started the rumor of air for a day, which is what gets Damon sent away earlier in the season. So I'm under the assumption that Mysaria is working against Damon and working for Otto. Now, could this be an example of Mysaria playing both sides? Whenever it suits her, does she stay with Damon? When it suits her, does she play with Otto? Or feed him secrets? The only thing that argues against the fact that Damon wouldn't know and that she is going against Damon is why then on Dragonstone does she ask him to protect her that she fears? Yes, she simply could be lying. But we kind of get the idea that they're trying to have a child, that there's more to it than that. And she seems genuine in that scene. Now, she could just be playing the Game of Thrones. But you have to wonder, why did Damon take Rhaenyra into a public brothel and make a show of it? And why, when Rhaenyra started to kind of take over that situation, she's biting Damon's lip and she's coming at him being the aggressor in that situation, why did he get so frustrated and back off and punch the wall and leave in the middle of it? One interpretation could be that Damon saw her kind of accepting it and wanting it and being in the moment and having real feelings, and he knows that this is a setup to sow discord within the Red Keep, right? Because they know, and this is assuming that he has that he knows that the White Worm is going to tell Otto, right? That he's playing 4D chess against Otto. So it begs the question of, did Damon know, and why did he go to the brothel? I don't know. I don't think he knows. I do think it's a little bit of a reach, but it does make sense if Damon is in on it with Mysaria and they're playing against Otto and they're trying to start the civil war. Because let's be honest, if they go into full-blown civil war, Damon has a dragon. Otto doesn't. Otto loses that fight 10 times out of 10. These are essentially nuclear weapons within Westeros. But I'm very curious. I'm very curious to see what the outcome of this is. I'm leaning more towards Mysaria operating on her own. And I said in one of my first videos when I was still talking about book for a show, I said Mysaria's character is going to be way more of a bigger player in this, not just a title keeper in the coming dance, but she will actually have a lot more going on. And she's going to be a cool character to watch, I think, even though her accent, like someone said earlier, kind of makes them ache when they hear it. I think that she's going to have a big role to play going down the line. And I'm very curious where Damon lands and if Damon is a part of the scheming. It just seemed weird that the kid came in and got paid while he was still there. Like, this seems like an unnecessary risk. Like, what if he had seen that kid outside the brothel that night? He's not dumb. He'd put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. Very curious. Very, very curious. Also, like the kid coming in and getting paid, I love that there was really not a ton of attention drawn to it. They didn't spell it out for you. Like, look here, guys, it's the kid. It was kind of like my wife's like, whoa, was that the spy? And I said, yeah, it was. And then we're sitting on the couch like, what? Does Damon know? And then we're having this conversation, and then we're having this stream, right? Very, very well done. Shake says Damon purposely took off Rhaenyra's hat. Felt like he wanted them to be recognized. I like it. That's a small detail. It's a small detail. I think Damon might just want to set up the rumor about Rhaenyra so he can convince Viserys to marry her to him. Yeah, he was kind of forcing the hand with this, right? Because you don't want her to have a bastard. Damon's thinking, okay, I get this rumor out there. I force him to marry us. Now the throne's secure. The Targaryen dynasty is now being reaffirmed, which is huge. And that's all Daemon wants. Daemon's seems to be sole motivation is to make the dynasty of the Targaryens as great as it once was, get as many pure-blooded Targaryens out there that he can, and to get away from the bronze bitch. What's up, Christian? Says the setup, mate. It's fire. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Finally starting to get this all dialed in. I've been thinking about this setup for a long time. And man, talking about a Song of Ice and Fire show, Westeros in 2022. I feel very fortunate. Derry says, to Damon's motivations, I agree with Matt Smith's take. Damon isn't necessarily striving to be king. He's striving to be put the strongest Targ on it. Yeah, it's all about reaffirming the family. Definitely. Padrissimo, can't figure out if Otto has good intentions. He seems dodgy, but he seems to be doing what the Hand of the King is supposed to do. I think he's doing a very good job of seeming as if he's a good Hand of the King while positioning his family to take over the throne. It just so happens that the cultural bias at the time sides with him putting Aegon on the throne. So, going to be really interesting. Yes, Christian says, very curious to see how Otto responds at this episode. Me too, dude. I'm so excited to see how this ends up playing out. It's going to get wild. Next episode, we're going to get like a mid-season kind of climax, and it's going to get nutty. It's going to get really crazy, and I'm here for it. Taylor says, it could really go either way at this stage, either Damon and Mysaria working together or not. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. And I agree. And, we need more people like Taylor out there, because every now and then, like, I'll see comments on videos. Usually they're yelling at me because I always ask both sides of the question. I say, well, I can see Mysaria. I'm leaning towards Mysaria, but there is some evidence to say that Damon may have been doing this as a scheme all along. And people come in and be like, that's ridiculous. Why would Damon know? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I feel like it's shot in a way where we're supposed to ask. And we need people who are more curious, be open to the idea. And I know that a Song of Ice and Fire theories specifically get really out there, and a lot of tinfoil happens. But all this we're in play here, folks. We're in play. Fire and Blood's wide open for details and interpretations, and so is the show. So let's have fun with it. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking these type of questions. The setup is indeed sucking diesel, boys. Bearded Bookworm, haven't seen you in a minute, dude. What's up? It's the power of the rumor. Damon told her it does in fact matter what the little people think of you as the ruler. That's a good point. And that would give a lot more power to the scene of her seeing herself being betrayed by the small people of Flea Bottom. And also kind of Damon almost saying, yeah, this is my intention. We gotta make sure people see this. I like that. Really good detail. Is the actor switch time jump confirmed after episode 5? I believe so. I don't know if it's like 100% confirmed, but I think we can all agree that after episode 5, that jump will happen. And I'm not nearly as apprehensive as a lot of people online are. I know, like, Millie, is that her name? Just killing it. But let's have some faith. They got the casting right this far. I think that they're going to do just fine with the older actors as well. Astrid says, I really love to see how uncomfortable Otto was to tell the news to Viserys. You could argue he's acting, but maybe he was thinking this made him look very bad because it made it too obvious. And he has to accept the fact. Because without a doubt, Viserys loves his daughter. Like, he loves Rhaenyra so much. And you could say that Otto probably feared the repercussions coming from this, because now he has to admit that he's had spies running around following the king's daughter. And I'm kind of glad that we had this like eye-opening moment for Viserys, because yes, he's a weak king. I don't think he's the worst king by far. He's not the worst king. But if he had taken that information from Otto and just been like, Rhaenyra, how dare you? Otto, thank you so much. I would have been like kind of insulted for Viserys and the character of Viserys, because at this point we can tell, I mean, he's savvy. He's just indecisive. He saw through the schemes, right? And then he starts putting the pieces together and then exposes Otto. Like, we needed that moment for Viserys because he's done a lot of dumb shit this season. This would have been too egregious if he didn't call this out. So it was very necessary. Damon is like Dominic Toretto. It's all about family. It's all about the family. The tinfoil is fun. Liam says, too, if the Essos cities like Lys do become a larger player in the book, the Messiah would be a good way to bring them into the political narrative if she isn't working with Damon, possibly. Yeah, and, we are getting a lot more mentions of the free cities than I thought we would. It's mentioned in Fire and Blood kind of as a throwaway thing, but we hear that Corlys has been, trying to match, is it the Lord of the Free Cities? I can't remember the exact title, with Elena. And it's like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing to do. And now, to be fair, like, that's probably just a throwaway line and an empty threat. But they could go that way. They could bring the free cities into this show, which would be different than the books or the book. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. So yeah, I think the fact that the free cities is getting mentioned so much is something maybe to keep our eye on, maybe not. Darius says, I think as fans, we understand that Damon is absolutely intelligent enough to be in league with Messarius, so the theorizing is valid. Yeah, and he also got to sit on Bloodstone or in the Stepstones and brew on this for quite some time. He has a plan. At least I like to think so. Lauren, what's up? I mentioned your tweet to me earlier, and I brought up the fact that Rhaenyra being damned if she does and damned if she doesn't with the moon tease. So thank you for that tweet. You really recontextualized that scene in my head, and I appreciate it. Lauren has to say now, she says, love the options this show offers for where the story will go. Like, we have an idea, but it's a fun ride to get there. A fun, messy, dramatic ride, no doubt. Otto looked really uncomfortable before entering the room to tell Viserys. Yeah, sure did. Oh, what's up, Chris Bookish Cauldron? My dude. I was thinking about you today whenever I was thinking about this stream, because I've been loving reading your tweets about the show. We're very like-minded when it comes to Song of Ice and Fire. And yeah, I was thinking about you today, dude. The overhead shot of him preparing himself to tell Viserys was a great artistic choice. Yeah, I think that sometimes we take for granted how well shot this show is. And I know it has a big budget, has an all-star cast and an all-star team, but there are shows that get tons of money. Like, for instance, the Foundation show on Apple TV wasn't that great. Did look okay. But man, some of the shots, they take the time to get it right. They take the time to get it right, and they do think outside the box. I think they're doing a fantastic job. See Lord of Bravos. That is from the books. Thank you, Shake. Thank you. I do get stuff wrong every now and then, ladies and gentlemen. It does happen. That's why Shake's in the chat to correct me. Yeah, he's done a lot of dumb shit. Talk about understatement. Yeah, Viserys has his faults. Okay. Was the Titan of Bravos built at that time? Would be awesome to see it again. I actually don't know. That's a question for the Maesters. Someone let me know. Sally says, Viserys might be weak, but he loves his family and always tries to keep the peace. But my boy Damon isn't helping him. Yeah, they're very much like butting heads, and they're kind of alike in some regard. Thought it was very shocking to see Viserys holding a knife to Damon's throat because he's had so much love for Damon. But I said this last week, and I think that unfortunately Viserys is starting to fall under the guise that Damon is maybe more like Maegor the Cruel than he is Jaehaerys, which maybe he is closer on that spectrum, but he is no Maegor the Cruel. And it's unfortunate that we're seeing this brotherhood kind of fall apart. And if you need a reaffirmation that Damon cares a ton about his family, let us not forget that it's not just, Valyrian blood that he cares about. It's Targaryen blood that he cares about. Because when Corlys badmouths Viserys, he says, "You will not talk about my brother that way. I can talk about my brother that way." From episode 2, I believe. And that kind of reverberates throughout the episodes, and keeping in mind his motivations to put the strongest Targaryen on the throne. It's the only thing I'll be tweeting about for the next 6 weeks. Let's go, Chris. Let's go. Yeah, I don't think Viserys is stupid. I think that he's indecisive, and then sometimes when he makes the decision, it's trying to please everybody, or he just makes the wrong decision. Pacey says, unfortunately, I have to go. It's 10:20 a.m. on Wednesday in Australia. I'm taking my boys to play a group, 2 hours of coffee and chat, so the parents' House of Dragons will be #1 topic. Well, I hope you have a good day. Thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. 10:20. Wow. Sounds like Wednesday's off to a good start, though, so got that to look forward to. I have this absolute raging pain in my neck, and I don't know what it's from. I'm not turning my head. What's happening? It's been a crazy week, folks. House of the Dragon had my brain buzzing, did the live reaction on the Bend the Knee channel, getting prepared for this, released a review. I got some news today that's pretty major. I can't talk about it yet, but pretty amazing news today, and a really awesome opportunity that I will let you all in on in a future date, not too far in the future, I hope. But yeah, it's just been a crazy week, and I started a new job as well, which is bananas. And my chair broke. I'm so mad my chair broke. What do you think the tea tastes like? Plan B? I've never taken one, so I'm not sure. Just because you care about something doesn't mean that you can't harm it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's true. Monzano or Manzano? Monzano. It's a sweet name. Could we interpret changes in this show to reflect changes that have taken place with the ending of A Song of Ice and Fire? I don't think so. I wouldn't draw too heavily on the changes in this show, matching up with the end of the book series. We do know that Aegon was a dreamer now. Like, that is definitely canon in the books. It's been hinted at since like 2015. A lot of hints of it in the text as well. Maybe I'll do a video on that one day, because I'm tired of people saying it isn't there, that there is zero justification, because I think there is. But yeah, I don't think that we should chase it too far. I think it's a really good idea to keep show canon and book canon, because in George's interview with History, I think it was History of Westeros, he basically said, yeah, we have book canon and show canon. I think Ryan Condell even said that in an interview as well. So Bearded Bookworm says, I think Otto had his trap and lines out there hoping to catch something useful politically. He catches a Jaws level fish and he wasn't sure he wanted to deal with it. Well, he probably didn't see that coming either. Let's be honest. Oh, also, another thing about Damon, and the reason why he may have been scheming all along with Massaria, or wanted to be caught with Rhaenyra, is the opening scene where they're talking about the tapestries and stuff. There's obvious bad blood or tension going on between Viserys and Rhaenyra, and Damon in the scene notices it. And he kind of does that Matt Smith, like, 1,000-yard stare. I don't think that was on accident. I can't say for sure, but I felt like this episode, every single shot mattered. I'm not going to say every episode will be like that, but this episode felt like every little detail mattered. And, who knows? Maybe I'm reaching. Not House of the Dragon related, but how's the new job going, Jimmy? Well, day 2, and it's going well. They're easing me in, which is always good. I think my last job, day 2, I was already committing code. So to actually be truly onboarded is a weird experience, and I'm like waiting to see, how I'm going to contribute to the team. So I feel optimistic. About the job so far. Chadia says, I am sad the actors will change. Really liking this Alicent Rhaenyra. Yeah, I am too. They're going to be in a ton of their stuff now, which is awesome. I think we'll be okay. Let's just have faith. They've casted this show pretty much perfectly, and Game of Thrones, for the most part, was casted perfectly. So I have faith. In the process. Astrid says, oh my God, Viserys being a jerk about the tapestries. I was like, no, you didn't. Oh, man. Thoughts of Henry Cavill and Elizabeth Olsen potentially joining for season 2. It's getting a lot of conversation lately. Multiple outlets are confirming it. So I haven't seen anything confirmed with Henry Cavill. I heard some people saying that it might be like he might be used in a like one shot flashback type of deal. I'll be shocked if Henry Cavill is included in this. Elizabeth Olsen seems to be a little bit more of a legit rumor. Um, I think she's in Marvel stuff. I don't watch Marvel. I'm also not like big into actors and actresses. Like I don't think I have a favorite. Maybe I have a favorite actor. I don't know. I don't think about it that often. So I don't know. As long as they do a good job, but they're going to cost a lot of money, I assume. So it'd be kind of weird for them to play a minor role, but maybe they just want a little bit of a cameo. I'm not sure. I don't know who Elizabeth Olsen would also play. I saw some names thrown around, but we might. I don't know. It might be spoilery, so I don't know. Hey, whatever. If they do a good job, it's fine. Chris Bookish Cauldron says it was the best shot episode so far. Love the rats throughout the episode. All that decadence. It's really just filth for the vermin to munch about in. Yeah, I agree. Also, Chris, do you feel like maybe the rats, the gray rats, are also kind of symbolism for the maesters? I'm just against the maesters at this point, I guess. Whatever. I'll just accept it. It's fine. But why is it so shocking? I thought the Targaryens were known to be incestuous. How many generations removed from that are we? Oh, I didn't mean because it's incest. I just meant because Damon's been away forever. He was there for the scene on the bridge where they're speaking in Valyrian. Otto didn't have context of what they were saying in Valyrian. And I'm talking about Rhaenyra versus Damon on the bridge from an earlier episode. So for him, he probably thinks they're at odds. I mean, she said, Damon, if you want to be the heir so bad, kill me and take it. So you'd think about it from Otto's perspective. It's probably pretty shocking to be like, wait, what? They were what? Not so much that it's incestuous. To be clear, I think Viserys and Emma, I always mispronounce it. They were cousins, so it's not far removed at all, really. Derry says, I think they're doing an amazing job with keeping an eye on so many details. Even Allison's fingernails are still damaged. Yes. Yeah, I the fingernail detail, even from episode 1, I really, really enjoyed. If someone knows, can someone tell me who directed this episode? And if they had done any before this, I would love to know. Because whoever did this episode, I want to do the rest. The conversation between the White Worm and Damon, she seems mad at him, like you owned me. I think she works for Otto now. I think the last episode, Otto reported that he had located her in the city. Yeah, and there's a chance, like I said, that maybe she's playing both sides, or maybe she is just full team Otto now, and it's gonna be interesting in the future. I do think that there are some details that could point to the fact that Damon knows, but there's also a chance that they're red herrings and that we're supposed to look at them and argue and wonder. I think that it's a conversation starter. Um, like I said before, I'm leaning more towards Mysaria acting independently. I don't necessarily know if she's devoted to anybody. I think she might be playing both sides. Oscar Governor says, do you have any idea of how much the source material the show will cover in season 1? Well, it's hard to say. So I think the dance in the book is only like a little over 200 pages. I might be wrong on that. I shouldn't even throw out numbers because someone's going to comment and be like, well, actually, it's this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. How about this? We could easily have 4 seasons of this, even with all the time jumps. That's why like people are saying, oh, we're getting through it so quick. And it's like, if this covers 30 or 40 years and we do 3 or 4 seasons, that's 10 years a season. So the time jumps actually make a lot of sense in my opinion. And we're going to settle down a lot and get into the nitty gritty. It's going to be like way thicker with drama than this. So if that answers your question at all, Christian, I hope it does. But like we have a lot to go. A lot of terrible things are going to happen, which isn't a spoiler because it's Westeros, right? Oh, Claire Kilner directed. She's doing episode 5 and 9 as well. The fact that she's doing the mid-season climax for next week, very good to hear. If we can carry this over, oh, that's excellent. Does Mysaria have little birds? Yeah, I think we saw one, right? I think we saw one running amok in Flea Bottom. I'm trying to think. We already talked about the werewood. Sir Harwin caught Rhaenyra running through the city, recognized her. This is after Damon took her hat off. Let's keep an eye on that. I'm not saying it's going to be a big deal, but it could be. That's an eyewitness. Very interesting. Oh, also the Dagger moment. His is the Song of Ice and Fire. Like that's how good this episode was. Is that the dagger being heated? Now I know we got some in the previews, but the fact that the dagger gets heated up and it has Valyrian glyphs on it, a Song of Ice and Fire. Like, come on, like that was dope. And we haven't even talked about like no one's really talking about that. And that shows. I mean, the character relationships in this show are driving it forward for sure. Jimmy, you're making me laugh. That's what I'm here to do. What? Funny how? How am I funny? Do I amuse you? It's my crappy Joe Pesci impersonation. That Claire Kilner is directing the penultimate episode is even better news. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Chadia says, does remind me of the ring a bit. Yeah, Ezra from Bend the Knee brought this up and was talking about how the one ring, obviously has, put it in the fire, the glyphs come out, and then the dagger has it as well. And like, do the daggers represent the fact, because the ring, the ring can be used for evil. And it's like, are the Targaryens using this prophecy for evil? It's a really good parallel to draw between the two series because even though they are very opposite, and George, wanted to have a conversation that's mostly an argument with Tolkien, they're still closely knit, right? Euron, Sauron, don't even get me started on that. Slowly Red, Mark, what's up, my man? I hope your move went well. I hope you're all you're snuggled in. We got to talk about Second Apocalypse soon, brother. I finished and I'm in a slump because of it. Nothing's quelling that slump, man. It's crazy. He says, I want more Damon buttocks. He's a dreamy nightmare. Oh man. Take it easy. Take it easy, Connor. I'm glad at least one person in chat got the Joe Pesci Goodfellas reference. Astrid says, oh, wow, it's pretty big to get episode 9 if they will continue the Game of Thrones pattern of the second to last episode being the climax of the season. I think they will probably keep that same energy. Just checked IMDb, so Olivia Cook will be playing the new Allison and Emma Darcy is Rhaenyra. Yeah, and I think that they're both talented, at least from the things that people have clipped to me, because again, I'm not like super invested in any actors or actresses, but I feel confident. Lorraine, so far, new show Dragon started off well. Yeah. Oh man, Shake, if you've never seen some of the stuff that people have pulled between Euron and Sauron and how it relates to Samuel Tarly, we got to have a conversation. Maybe I'll do a Euron stream one night. I know I'm not in a Song of Ice and Fire streamer, but I've thought a lot about Euron and Sauron and how they might parallel one another. And what would George do with that if they are? It's fun. Planet 628 says, my mom is visiting for the week, and so far you are her favorite YouTuber. Tell Mama Planet 628 I appreciate it, and thank you very much. That is my demographic. Jamie says, loving these videos, man. Still so surreal to me. We're back in this world. It is so much more than I could have asked for. Yeah, I agree. And I saw somebody post on the Song of Ice and Fire subreddit today. It's one of the very few Reddits I ever go on. And someone was like, I wasn't planning on watching the show. I'm not planning on, but how is it? I'm just curious. And so many people who felt cautious or burnt out or didn't want it and watched it and were like, it's actually really good. Like, it's actually really, really good. And to see that relief from people who, feel very spurned from season 8 and the lack of Winds of Winter. And, we have a lot that we could have gripes about in the Song of Ice and Fire fandom or Westeros fandom, whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, we're getting a multi-million-dollar adaptation that we can only judge it based on what's released. And by what's released, it's very good. At the very least, it's very good. In my opinion, it's excellent. And I feel like it just keeps getting better in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm living in the moment. I'm living in the moment. Gives me the feelings of the Hold the Door episode. Like, you remember just turning that off and being like, wow. Like, and going online and seeing people freaking out and just being like living in that moment. We're going to have those moments with this show. Like, that's going to happen. Some of the stuff is going to be crazy. Even episode 1, right? When the dagger gets and the secret gets revealed. Like even people who were a little bit bitter or very bitter over season 8, they might not have liked it, but the majority of people like, damn, that was a no shit moment. That was definitely a no shit moment. Shake says, "Can we talk about the preview for episode 5 or too spoilery?" So I wasn't gonna watch any of the previews. I kind of said I'm done with it, but I watched it because it came up my YouTube recommends, and I was like, fine, I'll click it. And there's gonna be a wedding, and we'll leave it at that. There's gonna be a wedding. Seems like people would like a Euron stream. Okay. Hayden Lyle says, "Who is your favorite character in Hot D, which earned its name properly this week? And also, who's your favorite book characters?" Oh man, I think the show is so good. Um, trying to think if there's any like good characters. I like Harwin Strong. He's cool. I think I'm gonna go ahead and pick Damon. I think it's Damon. Like especially for the performance. You really are glued to the screen every time he graces anyone's presence and talks to any characters. And even whenever he doesn't speak, he commands a presence. Like Matt Smith's killing it. So I would pick Damon. Also, he's just so chaotic. He's so fun. It's like Jamie and Littlefinger all rolled into one somehow. Has the same haircut as Brienne does in this episode, which was awful. My favorite book characters, it changes every single time I read, but Jamie Lannister is probably my favorite. And Tyrion. So the Lannister brothers are probably my favorite. If I had to pick one that was kind of surprising this last time around that I really, really enjoyed on a reread was Samwell. I am a Samwell defender now after reading the series like 7 times. And in fact, hot take, I think Samwell is the hero of the series in a lot of ways. So Tony Patrick said, "Would you recommend Mistborn?" I didn't love Mistborn, Era 1. I did not love the first book of Mistborn, Era 2. But if you've read other Sanderson and enjoyed it, I think you should try it. And I do think the first Mistborn book in Era 1 is a good book, and the ending is excellent. So yeah, I would at least read book 1. If you hate book 1, you're good. You don't need to continue. Third Space Maker says, "Joining late, have you discussed the transition of the fortune teller?" Okay, yeah. Yeah. So Third Space, I haven't, and it's because it's too spoilery. I'm trying to keep this spoilers up to episode 4, but I know what you're talking about, and yeah, it would give away. I see that you're saying in the chat today that you don't know anything about the prequel stuff, so it's all good. But I can't really talk about the implications of that, unfortunately. But good catch. It's important. Oh, Lorraine says, "What about the Lord of the Ring new show? Is it worth paying to see?" Well, if you don't have Prime, I don't know. I don't know if I'd pay to see it, but I don't hate Rings of Power nearly as much as everyone seems to. Like it's fine. Like I feel like I'm in Middle Earth for a little bit sometimes, and it looks good. So Rings of Power is like a very slow build. I think it's almost a little premature to at least judge it as an independent show until the season's over. It's just like one of those type of deals. A lot of people said Game of Thrones season 1 was super duper boring. Then they get to the finale and a penultimum, and they're like, holy shit. I don't know if we'll get those kind of moments from Rings of Power, but I don't know. I think it's fine. I'm not as attached to Tolkien lore as other people, even though I love the trilogy and Hobbit. But yeah, I think it's fine. I don't know if I'd pay for Prime. I'd maybe wait till it's all out and binge it. Probably a better idea, right? Fantasy Fanatics says, as someone who watched Game of Thrones after it ended, it's so great to be part of the conversation, speculation. Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to be a part of even more conversation, because I do books here, I do a lot of different stuff. Bend the Knee on YouTube, and they have a podcast. Definitely the way to go. One of the biggest, if not, it's like definitely in the top 3 to 5 biggest podcasts for Song of Ice and Fire. I do a lot of stuff with them. Those are my guys, and they always have really good dialogue. Also, you should go back and listen to their episodes for when Game of Thrones was live. They're actually a lot of fun to listen to. Weddings have a tendency not to go well in this world. Yeah. You're always going to have people mad at stupid shit. Always. Corlys Velaryon is killing it. Killing this role. Yeah, people are saying the new hand will be Lionel Strong. We'll see. Hayden Lau says the fact that Matt Smith had no dialogue in episode 3 yet had one of the most impactful scenes is still baffling to me. Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm giving him the nod as my favorite character in the show. To go 10 minutes without saying anything. Now he had a lot of special effects around him, which were cool, but he did great. A lot of body language went a long way. Darius says Samwell is the hero. No true fan of Lord of the Rings as Gurm is will include a Sam and not have him be essential to winning. So, all right, I'm going to get into this a little bit. So if we look at Harley House Banner, and I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but for those who have an internet connection, don't close out the stream, but can you go look at Tarly's house sigil for me? Okay. The house sigil for Tarly's is an archer. There's an archer on their banner. Okay. Samwell is terrible at everything except being a friend. And the thing he is least terrible at the Night's Watch, shooting arrows and archery. Okay. That's pretty cool. Who cares? Okay. Where is Sam right now in Dance with Dragons? It's at the Citadel. Okay. Where's Euron? Well, Euron, it seems like he might siege Old Town. Where's the Citadel? Oh, it's in Old Town. Okay, so now if we take, I'm sorry, I might have said Sauron, I meant Euron. Euron, Sauron, let's just say they're connected. Let's just say that they're kind of a parallel, this apocalyptic doom that's going to come across the world, and that's exactly what Euron wants to be. He wants to be this god. Euron, Sauron, big eye. Okay, well, James, you're reaching a little bit. Well, what do they call Euron? Right? They call him the Crow's Eye. And if you look at the banner, the coat of arms that he uses for Euron Greyjoy, there is one big red eye, just like Sauron. It's an eye patch. Is it possible that maybe from the top of the Citadel, that Samwell Tarly, boop, gets one arrow off and hits Euron, the biggest, baddest guy in Westeros, in that red eye that is signified on his banner that relates Euron to Sauron and their kind of same vibe and motivations, and that Samwell Tarly is the one. It's interesting. Also, if you needed any more tinfoil, the Sphinx is at the Citadel in Old Town. And if I hope I'm not misremembering this, but I believe the Sphinx has a bow, right? Very interesting. So go check that out. Look at Euron's banner with the big red eye that looks like Sauron. Sauron, kind of the same, right? And Samwell Tarly being less terrible at anything. It's archery, and his house banner being the bow. The Sphinx is there with a bow in Old Town. We have this big moment building up. Just saying. Maybe Samwell is the one to subvert the big threat that is Euron Greyjoy. Also, not to keep going, but there's a lot of questions about how a wall could come down. It's interesting because Sam had that Horn of Winter. What if they're mixed up? What if Dragonbinder and the Horn of Winter got switched and that horn is in Old Town? I don't know. Euron's there with Dragonbinder. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. All I'm saying is look into it. Samwell looks like the most like George, and he's a maester. I always thought it was a Gurm version of himself in Westeros. Yes. And Samwell is a coward. And I think George has even said this, like, I'm a coward. Like, I would be a coward in this world. And that's probably why Samwell has such great relations with the ladies in Westeros. Andy Smith. This is me officially complaining I haven't been invited to chatting with Nuts. PS House of the Dragon is great so far. Andy, I'm having Alex on this Friday. If you would like 2 weeks after that, I'd love to have you on. I saw your video, the great return of Andy Smith. And I can't invite you on. You were gone. You were gone. I said, where'd my friend Andy go? He's disappeared. You ghosted me. I'm just kidding. You didn't ghost me, but I'm glad you're back. And I would love to have you on Chatting with Nuts. I already kind of put you on I got a list, and you were already on there. So be happy to have you on the episode after this next one for sure. The huntsman, the bow and the arrow, which Sam is getting really good at. That's right. The eye on Euron's banner. Dude, this is the stuff like, this is why it's my favorite series. You had me until the last part. I don't see Euron getting off in Old Town, but I need to look into this now. It doesn't have to happen in Old Town, though, either, Shake, right? Like, what if they end up battling into the Vale or the Riverlands or something, and then there's a big battle, and, like, it's Sam that takes control? You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't have to be at Old Town. He could even succeed in all that. Sam gets out, gets the boat. Like, there's a lot that you can do with that. I'm not saying it has to happen at Old Town, but they are converging. I don't know. It's a reach. I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's at least interesting to think about. Derry's with me, though. She says 100% Jimmy. Samwell is the one. And yes, Sphinx is also a phenomenal archer. What fantasy world would you travel to if you had the chance? Westeros. I would be a hedge knight. I'd set off on my donkey. I go down through the Riverlands. I get a nice base tan down in Dorne. I would chat it up. Maybe become sort of the morning if I feel like it. I don't know. And then I'd probably get involved in some politics. Go to Bravos, experiment a little bit. Who knows? House of Black and White. I mean, come on. I'd go to Westeros. I'd die immediately, but I'd go and I'd be a hedge knight and I would solve petty, feudal disputes or whatever. All right, Jimmy, if we were doing some hot D, a Song of Ice Fire stream, what's your favorite fan theory? 10400. Also, if you could have Alt Shift X make any video, what would you have from them? Well, Alt Shift X has covered everything, but I would love to actually hear what he thinks is the ending of the series. He doesn't really speculate on that much, and I would love to hear his final predictions for the final 2 books. If I could have him make anything, he's the GOAT. I think he's not just the best of Song of Ice and Fire creator. I think he's the best YouTuber ever. I love him. Shouts out to Alt Shift X, who will never watch this. And my favorite fan theory. So I really like the Samwell one I just talked about. It's been my pet one for a while. I like the fact that maybe Dunk knocked boots with old Nan. Giggity. Kind of like that. But my favorite one that will never be confirmed and probably most likely is not true is that Arthur Dayne is Corn Halfhand. They have the dawn, the sun, the morning sun coming over. There's a couple lines in there. There's just a lot to ask about how Ned Stark could ever beat Arthur Dayne. But I don't want to spoil any later things in the books for people who haven't actually read all of them, because I know a couple people in the chat that I know personally haven't. Sword of the Morning, Arthur Dayne being Corn Halfhand's probably my favorite. I was on the train for a very long time that Mance was Rhaegar, because he's described as like lyrical, and just the way he's described, it actually comes off a lot like Rhaegar, but I don't believe that anymore. And in fact, I've done so much research into trying to prove it that I disproved it to myself. So no, Mance is 100% not Rhaegar. Rhaegar is not alive. He can't be for the series to work. So that's my personal opinion. Like, some people say, like, if that theory were true, I'd give up on the series, which I absolutely hate, because you're just setting yourself up for failure. Because they're like, if this ridiculous theory that's 3 times removed from the main series isn't true, I'm out. George has to resolve this. And it's like, no, he's not going to resolve all the ties, people. He's not going to do the best of top 20 theories, and wrap them all up. Things are going to be left ambiguous, and you have to be willing to separate yourself from that piece of the series. You have to be able to say, okay, well, what's reasonable for him to tie up, and things that don't really need an answer other than the fact that you gave importance to it. But yeah, I see people sometimes, they say, if Rhaegar isn't Mance, I'm out. And I'm just like, what? That's dumb. It's really dumb. Shake says, yeah, the general theory is promising. I mean, specifically him shooting an arrow from the Citadel is a bit too much in my opinion. Yeah, sure. I'm not attached to my theories. And I'm not the only person to ever think this. So that's fine. If anything, I would say the thing that you could take away from this is that Euron is definitely supposed to embody Sauron within Westeros, in my opinion. Did you catch Gurm's Homage to Robert Jordan, A Feast for Crows. Archmaester Rigney wrote that the history is a wheel, that the nature of man is fundamentally immutable. As a Wheel of Time fan, awesome to see. Yeah, and there's been other like calls to it. It's not Dune, I don't think, but Chronicles of Amber, I think, is one of the first times I've heard like of the Wheel of Time. In fact, those words might have been mentioned. And maybe it wasn't Chronicles of Amber. I can't remember, but that was before Jordan. So I do wonder maybe if Gurm was giving a nod to Zelazny, because I know Zelazny is one of, if not his favorite author. All Swift decks. I am more on the Mance equals Arthur train. I would have to see some sort of evidence for that. Favorite of Song of Ice and Fire book? Mine's A Feast for Crows. So Storm of Swords is my favorite book of all time. So if we discount that, on this last reread, A Feast for Crows was my favorite of the 5. My favorite tinfoil is that Ashara Dane is at Greenwater Watch married to Helen Reed, mother of Mira and Jojen. It's cool. I just want more information about the lore. Yeah. I don't think people realize how much longer it would take George to wrap up everything. Well, he writes, he writes things very, very ambiguous on purpose. I sent you the evidence, Jimmy. What, above or in a PM? If you sent me in a PM, send it again. I can't remember. I've read so many theories. Oh, Robert Jordan's real name is James Rigney, so that's definitely on the nose homage to Jordan. Oh, that's excellent. Okay, I didn't know his real name was Rigney. That's awesome. Good. Yeah, people like, I know people are always like, Wheel Time versus A Song of Ice and Fire, internet garbage. They liked each other, and they liked each other's works. So why can't we all do that? I don't really like the Wheel of Time though. All right, we've gotten off topic from episode 4. People are probably falling asleep at this point, so I'm going to call it a night. I will be back Friday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time for Chatting with Nuts with Alex Neves, one of my good friends, my first friend here on BookTube, and I can't wait to talk to him. We're going to be talking about Rings of Power, which he doesn't like. And I'm probably a little more positive on him than he is, so that'll be interesting. We'll probably talk House of the Dragon, and we'll be talking about our journey on BookTube, because me and him kind of started at the same time. I think it's going to be a really great conversation. I'm looking forward to catching up with Alex. That's this Friday live at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time for Chatting with Nuts, and I will be back next week, probably Tuesday night, talking about the mid-season climax of House of the Dragon episode 5. If you like this video, please hit like. It helps people find it after the fact. If it's your first time here, I'd love to have you. Think about subscribing. If you dislike the video, you can dislike it. There's a Patreon in the description. It's optional, but always appreciated. And until I see you next time, remember to always keep turning the page. I love y'all. Peace.